You know what I could really go for right now? Literally anything that comes in a McDonald's carton, wrapper, or bag. Or a McDonald's cup. Yes, any of those items should do it.
We've got your cravings covered. Now stop in for the flaky Filet-O-Fish, the crispy snack wrap, or large fries for just $2.99. Limited time only. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with any other offer.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Game night's fun until someone spends 5 minutes lining up one shot. Chalk, breathe, re-chalk, still aiming. While they figure it out, I fire up Chumba Casino. I can spin anywhere, anytime, and there's always a new social casino game every week. Spins happen way faster than that shot. Play now at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm a nobody from nowhere that ain't never done nothing. That's what I am. An old head. These young coaches, I tell you what, I can't figure these jokers out. They got a backpack on and tight something. I don't know what they're doing. They're getting on my nerves, I can tell you that. I know what ain't in the backpack. A string and a let me paint that line for you. That ain't in there. That's for sure. I had a kid the other day. He said, "Hey, coach, didn't Christopher Columbus write the Pledge of Allegiance?" I said, "He sure did. He also played quarterback for the 1985 Chicago Bears." He said, "Bet." That happened. Sun Coaches, Season 6, where coaches come and tell their stories. Some of them are funny. Some of them is going to help you in your coaching journey. Not everybody has a funny story, but everybody has a story. Hope you enjoy Sun Coaches, brought to you by Titan Sensor. Sun Coaches is proud to partner with Titan Sensor for Seasons 6 and 7. Titan is made in the USA, proudly founded and based in Texas. When you connect with Titan, you are not alone. You can collaborate and share templates with other coaches across the country to build reports and foster competition. Used by programs such as State 6A, Georgia State Champion, Grayson High School, Titan can tailor a package to fit your needs. The eye in the sky never lies. Improve your team's performance with Titan. Welcome to Sun Coaches Podcast, Season 6, and today I'm extremely excited to be joined by the head coach at Eagles Landing Christian Academy, Coach Justin Roberts. Thanks for being on with us.
Man, I appreciate you having me on here. It's I've listened to it for a long time, the podcast, so it feels pretty cool to be on this side of it.
Well, Coach, just like I do with everybody, tell us where you actually grew up and went to high school.
All right, so I went to Deland High School in Central Florida. Spec Martin Stadium, home of the Water Boy. Played there, graduated in 2008, 2009. Had a pretty unique experience there. Had 3 different head coaches, but all 3 very different people. I had Kevin Pettis, I had Larry Candido, who was a nice guy, and I had Dean Fabrizio my freshman year. So I had a pretty cool crew.
I know all 3 of those guys. That's awesome.
Yeah. I had a pretty cool crew of coaches, and ran a lot of different things. But DeLand is a really special place, a special community. It's one of the few places in Florida that you kind of get that Georgia feel, the one high school town and everything. And so played high school ball there, and then came up to Georgia for college, played at Valdosta State, and got to really experience just that. I don't know, I was talking with somebody the other day in the office, and I'm just listing off names of people that, I've been fortunate to know and be friends with. And they're like, "How do you know this guy?" I'm like, "Well, Valdosta State. It's just the cradle of coaches that comes out of there and the cradle of people. It was just unbelievable. So I got to play there. Won a national championship in 2012, and then got into high school coaching.
So in high school, what all did you just play football, or did you play other sports as well?
So I just played football. I did weightlifting as well. I played. My dad was a high school coach for a long time. He coached in Central Florida, Apopka, Edgewater, Oak Ridge, all of those. And so he actually he and Coach Fabrizio coached together. I think it was at Colonial High School. And so he kind of retired from coaching football. We joked around. We called him Coach Country Club because he stopped coaching football and started coaching golf and tennis. And in Florida, he made about 2 times as much doing that than he did coaching football. And so he was like, I'm the smart one. These guys are going out to practice, doing all that crazy stuff. And I'm going to the country club, driving, the cart around. But so we kind of, tried to decide what the best place was. And even though he was still actually teaching at Deltona High School, he thought, Deland would be a good place. So I played football there. I really, I was a golfer, believe it or not. Like my brother played college golf, and he was really good. And I used to be pretty decent. And so the big thing for me going into my 9th grade year was, do I play golf or football? Because I had never really played organized football. I just grew up on my dad's sideline. I tried Pop Warner one time, and man, Pop Warner's great if you have good people doing it. And unfortunately, the people that they had running at the time, I mean, it was just like, they were like the people that you see on these Friday night Tykes thing, my dad didn't want me to hate the sport. And so he was just like, look, you can be on my sideline, come to my practices, do everything else like that, and do all this on the side or whatever. So played football, did weightlifting, and just tried to kind of get caught up to speed because, I was a little bit behind. We didn't have the 7-on-7s like you have now where, kids have alternate routes to kind of stay in. And, all I'd really ever done was being a ball boy and run the heck out of boot and waggle at practice for the scout team. So, I was pretty far ahead, from a knowledge standpoint, but from just a playing standpoint, I still had to kind of get up to speed.
So you were a quarterback.
I was a quarterback. Yeah. I was a quarterback. I kind of, grew up, like I said, at my dad's practices, I was the ball boy, so, man, that was some of the most fun I've ever had was being on the sideline. And, every coach's son will tell you, I mean, there's just nothing better. I think my favorite story, I was down in the ball boys can go a little bit further away. And my dad was arguing a pass interference call one time. And I didn't know any better at the time. I was like 6 or 7, and he's just chewing the ref out and cussing him. And I'm like, Dad, and everybody knows you don't answer to Dad. You say Coach. So I said, Coach, and he turns a button. I go, it's the good call. Quit arguing. And he got so mad at me, and he was like, So we went home that night, and he was like, if I'm ever talking to an official, you do, I know it was a good call, but I'm still trying to get on my side. But yeah, so I played quarterback. My dad played tight end. So that was kind of my. I just like playing quarterback. I really enjoyed it. I loved the aspect of trying to, lead some guys in the huddle. And, so yeah, I played quarterback, and I was pretty decent back in the day.
So at Valdosta State, you were after Barrett Wilkes?
Yes. I was after Barrett Wilkes. Yeah, we got there. So my first year at Valdosta State, it was actually kind of funny. So Coach Cawthon, my uncle played at Valdosta State as well in the 80s. My uncle's Bill Wilhelm, O-line coach at Thomas County Central during all their heyday, and Coach Pilcher and everything. And so I was trying to decide. I mean, I was an okay high school football player. Reality of it is nowadays I probably would have had a hard time finding any place to go with the portal and everything. And especially too, when I was at Deland, man, we had Mike Gillisley, who went to Florida to play running back, and we had Pop Saunders, who went to Florida to play safety. So, we ran the wing tee, and any pass play probably wasn't a good play, because let's hand it to one of these two guys and see if somebody can tackle them. So, I tried to sort out where to go, and I went on a visit to Valdosta State, and Coach, it's funny because Coach Faulkner, who's at Tech now, kind of talked with him, met with him, and I had a preferred walk-on spot. And then my first move-in day, like we get up there, and I'm like, hey, where's this Faulkner guy at that I met? And they're like, he's gone. And he'd gone to Central Arkansas, and this was, kind of before the Twitter world and everything else like that. So, had Coach Dean, Robbie Brown was the OC, and then Russ Calloway. Tucker Pruitt was the class before me. So Tucker had just graduated, and then I got in there and had Russ Calloway, who's at Florida now. He was kind of the rising junior senior class. And so, like I said, man, it was just Valdosta State's an unbelievable place, unbelievable people. There, and now I will say, not all that glitters is gold. I mean, there are some, there's some stories about Valdosta State that we could probably tell in another podcast for another time, but it is definitely a cool place.
So when you came out of Valdosta State, did you know going in that you wanted to coach, or did you want to do something else?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know. It's tough because any any dad that is a coach a lot of times too, and they always say, like, I was watching that Dale Earnhardt documentary on Prime last night, and they were talking about how Dale's dad didn't want him to drive race cars, and so my dad was like, don't do it. Don't get into it. Don't get into it. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. And I'm like, man, but I love it. You love it. Like, it's all I've ever seen. It's all I've ever known. And so he was like, are you sure? And I'm like, absolutely. And so I at first I wanted to coach, but I wasn't sure that I wanted to teach because, it was like, man, this teaching, is for the birds. You're not going to make any money. And so I went into my first spring at Hagerty High School in Seminole County. And Phil Ziegler, who's a Central Florida legend, he needed a quarterback coach. And so he was like, well, why don't you come try this part-time? You can see if you like it. And then if you like it, we'll find you a part-time teaching job in the spring and kind of go from there. And so, man, I talked to insurance people. I thought about going into State Farm. I looked at, just all kinds of stuff. And I did it for a spring, and I freaking loved it. I was like, God, this is unbelievable. This is great. And we were awful. I mean, we were so bad, it was a great group of kids, but you coming from a place where I'm used to athletes and stuff like that. I mean, you had to coach your tail off to get a first down, and it was great. And so they got me a little teaching gig. I was I think a 60% employee, and I had a little cart, and I floated, and I went to different classrooms. But honestly, it was the best thing ever because I got to know the campus, I got to know the people, and I really just kind of I loved it. And I was like, man, I can't imagine doing anything else. And so kind of got in there. And it was funny though too, because and it's kind of fitting now, but when I was coming out of college, I wasn't sure if I wanted to get into high school or college coaching. And I actually went and I met with Muschamp at Florida, because Mikey, who my high school teammate was, he was starting running back on that team. And I kind of, was pursuing that GA, and I didn't know it. And man, it's so tough because, those guys, the time that you have to put in. And, I heard stories from my college coaches about, their daughter got braces, and they came home and they were eating dinner with her and said, when'd you get braces? Dad, I got them 2 months ago, and they didn't notice it, and so I wanted to have a family. I wanted to be involved. And I figured high school was a better route. So got plugged in there and loved it. But I will say, I was going to say, as my dad, he was like, man, if you're going to coach high school, you need to do it in Georgia. They do it right. They do it better than Florida. And at the time I was like, yeah, but I like Florida, and I didn't know any better, and so went down there. I did 1 year at Hagerty, and then went to university where I ended up being at for 12 years before making this move.
Awesome. So when you got to university, what was your initial position?
So I actually, the head coach at university at the time was Brian Kells, and my dad hired him. He gave him his first job. And so, truth be known, university wasn't really good before I got there. I mean, I think they had won 5.
Drew McIntyre here from WWE. Wielding the Claymore can be a life of chaos. When I'm not dominating in the ring, Chumba Casino is how this warrior takes a wee break. With hundreds of online social games and new weekly releases, there's always something fresh to try. And those daily boosts, next level. Even my free time feels like Valhalla. So when life feels like a battle, kick up your feet, have some fun, and let's chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T's and C's. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
100 season. They were the school was only 4 or 5 years old. And he said he wanted a quarterback coach, a skill kind of guy. And I was driving 45 minutes to work and paying tolls, and university was about 7 minutes from the house, and I wasn't going to have to pay tolls. And so I was like, well, shoot, I can do that. And it was kind of funny too, because I was a quarterback coach, and the best thing, honestly, that ever happened was I got paired with an old O-line coach that was a wing T guy. He'll probably kill me for saying he's old, but at the time he was older. But it was the best thing ever, man, because coming from Valdosta State, we were just inside zone, outside zone, and we had dudes, and it was great. And then you go to Hagerty and you try to run inside zone with a 5'3", 160-pound guard. And you're like, yeah, this doesn't work as well. Like you're trying to, well, hold on, like when I had Ryan Schrader that's playing for the Falcons, it worked great, and now I got, Billy that's got a tennis club membership, and that ain't doing it, and so really kind of getting understanding the run game and the wing T principles with him was just unbelievable. And then it helped too, man. They said, hey, we got this rising 8th grade running back that's pretty good. He might be special. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay. I've been around some pretty good ones. And it turns out he ended up being like the number 2 running back in America by the time he graduated high school. Lorenzo Lingard went to Miami, and he was a freaking stud. So it was really cool to we came in the first year together. He's playing for the Houston, whatever they're called, the Rough Riders, I think, in the UFL. And so I was a quarterback coach my first year, and then the next few years I was the co-OC, and we kind of just tried to, the wing T was great, but we tried to evolve it a little bit and kind of add some of the new things. Kind of Auburn was doing that stuff at the time. And then I was the OC by myself for a few years, or 4, and then I was the head coach for the last 2.
So what was it like transitioning from being on staff, being a position coach, going to a coordinator, and then being the head coach and putting your own stamp on it?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I mean, it was a challenge. I will say this, the one thing that, I think as a head coach, you have to know what you're good at. You have to hire good people, and you have to let them do their jobs. And like, Coach Kells, who I work for, who was my head coach the whole time there, he was excellent in the regard of he knew what his strengths was and he knew what his weaknesses were. And he hired people and he let them do the job. So the cool thing for me was I kind of almost got to be a head coach without the title for a few years. And so I kind of got to try some things, and I kind of got to do some things, and so that was really, really, really important. And I don't think I would have been able to have as good of a couple years as a head coach that I did, just because I was in on those conversations. I was able to make some decisions and kind of do that. The challenge was a little bit, just like with anything, is you kind of go from, sitting next to people to then sitting in front of people, if that makes sense. But like, I think people say it, but I try to live it. Like, I'm big on servant leadership, and like, at the end of the day, just because I'm the head coach, it doesn't mean I'm not going to be doing laundry now with you. It doesn't mean I'm not going to be painting the field with you, And so I tried to really, in that first year, almost overdo it, the stuff that I was doing, just because I would tell them, like, if I'm going to ask you to do the job, I'm going to do the job myself, and that goes for the whole program. Like, it doesn't matter how the job gets done, as long as the job gets done. And so, even my wife, she would kick me sometimes, and she's like, we're the only ones coming up to do laundry on the weekends, you have other coaches. And I said, yeah, I know, but I don't want them to think that I'm just coming in now and I'm sitting in this pompous chair and going, hey, peasants, do the laundry. And so, and so, as it kind of progressed, but I had some really good assistants, man. And what really helped me too was when I was that offensive staff that we had, man, we were together for 8 or 9 years. And so, as crazy as it sounds, when I took over as a head coach, I actually called defense for the 2 years. And that was unbelievable. I mean, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because, we all think that we've got the game figured out, at some point. We think we're the smartest people in the world. And I thought I had a pretty good pulse on defense. And Russ, actually, who's the Russ Calloway, when he was a quarterback at Valdosta, he taught me a ton. And he went and worked for Kirby at Bama. And I remember him telling me, like, dude, like, sitting in on those defensive staff meetings and finding out, like, looking at it through a different lens, it's be a game changer for you. And you hear people tell it at clinics, like, hey, offensive coaches, go sit in defense. And when you're young, you're like, yeah, okay, like, whatever, I'm going to go learn how to, run mesh again, or, a different way. But actually game planning defense and looking at it, and like, I would look back at the stuff that we did that I thought was the greatest thing in the world, and I'm going, man, that doesn't really cause me an issue. Like, that's cool orbit motion, like, doesn't cause me a problem. I'm not losing any sleep over it. And so, but it was really good because I had my whole offensive staff. So, they were still running our offense. It was my O-line coach, who's an unbelievable coach. He was now my OC. And so I was able to kind of run the defense and be over there, but still, hey, what are we doing? I know the terms. I know, what we're trying to do. It was still my offense and my verbiage and everything else like that. And he took it to another level. And now I'm texting him because he's in Florida still. And I'm like, hey, why did we change this? Or what did we do here? Remind me, or whatever. So, I think it helped was just the relationships that we'd had. I mean, like, again, you try to treat people the right way, and I think the fact that our offensive coaches, man, like, we had, like I said, for 8 years, we had pretty much the same group. And then, heck, man, even our wide receiver coach, last year before the year started, as only Florida schools can, they kind of took his teaching position. And I mean, I'm in August and I don't have a wide receiver coach, and I'm like, holy crap. And he let like 3 days go by and he was like, Coach, you don't have to pay me. I'm going to come out there. I'm going to finish it with this group. And so he was just a lot of really good people, you know, and like if you're fortunate enough, man, to work with a group of guys like we had, you know, that's what makes it special. And I think, you know, those are things that, you know, you kind of cherish.
Well, hitting on the coaching from the opposite side of the ball, like I'm coaching offensive line now, and I've done it before, but I've always been a defensive guy.
Yeah.
You know, defensive coordinator or coaching the defensive side of the ball. And it's just funny how you look at things from your side of the ball.
Oh, dude, yeah,
and I'm looking at the kids like, hey, listen, this is where they're going to fit.
Yeah,
exactly.
This
is their rule. This is what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I make the offensive coaches get a little, they kind of look at me funny, and I'm like, do what makes your job easier. Because, you know, on defense, there's not a whole lot of thinking. You know, you read, react, go.
Read, react, get lined up. I mean, can we have a person in every gap, you know, like make them snap it again? Yeah, exactly.
And so I try to switch that to the other side, and I'm like, look, guys, is he in a 4-eye? No, Coach, I think he's in a 3. Then we need to make a deuce call instead of having an ace call to the -1. Y'all can deuce to the minus, and they're just looking at me like, we can do that. What is easiest for you.
Or a coach is in a 4-eye. Yeah, Coach, I don't know. Okay, widen your split out a little bit. Right? Does he come with you? Okay. No, he stayed in there. Well, now he's definitely a 4-eye. It's easier, you know, or he came with me. Well, now we've widened the hole out a little bit, and now he's ahead, you know, so yeah, it's just, man, and again, like,
can you cut him off? No. Yeah, okay. Well, make a switch call with the guard. Let him do your job. Now you do his job.
Yeah.
Now you fold for the mic. Let him block back on the 4-eye. Do what's easiest.
I think exactly. And I think that goes like to the whole evolving thing too. Like in my first ever, like, oh crap moment was, you know, we're sitting there, Lorenzo, his senior year, you know, and even when we were like wing T, like we never like gave him a bunch of carries, you know, like we try to be balanced. We always try to make sure they have to, you know, whatever. Well, then when you have this alien, you know, that's a 6'2", 235-pound kid that also won the 110-meter state hurdle, like at the end of the day, our offense was, we're going to give the ball to this guy in a bunch of different ways and see if a high school kid can tackle him, you know, like that was it. And we're going to move him around. And what I say that is, the next year, and look, there's a pride element in all of us, you know, and so he was the Gatorade Player of the Year, and we're doing all this, and man, I'm a great coach. This was my first year as OC. The next year, we have a fullback that fills in his place, great kid, about 5'8", about 165 pounds, and I'm calling trap and belly into the same looks that I got last year, and we're getting a 1-yard gain, and I'm like, oh crap, you know, and like, and there's that evolving moment of like, okay, well, maybe we're going to have to do some more things here, you know, to kind of look at, have a chance to succeed. And honestly, that's kind of when we morphed into the whole RPO world, because before it didn't matter if we didn't block everybody. We had a guy that could make a miss. Now
he was an eraser.
yeah, he was an eraser. I mean, he was an eraser, and he was a multiplier. Like we would always say, he was a multiplier because, like, when he got off the bus, it was like we had 5 more kids. I mean, because I'm looking at, I'll never forget my first game as offensive coordinator. We're playing Dr. Phillips, and you know Dr. Phillips. I mean, they've just got some creatures, and they always have. And I remember we're looking at the game, the film before the game, and we're going to attack this weak side defensive tackle because he was the smaller one, right? And that was going to be the guy that we're going to go after. And we get off the bus, and we're looking in warm-ups, and I'm looking at this kid, and the smaller one is 6'3", 285 pounds, and I'm going, oh my God, like that's the guy we're going after, you know, like this guy's giant. But again, Lorenzo was an eraser, you know, and he was such a good kid. He was a fun kid to coach, but. Yeah, man. So it was just, it's funny how when you look at, if you take a step back and look at it through the other side, man, it's unbelievable. Because like I said, even, you know, these last couple of years, people are doing stuff on offense that is truthfully stuff that we did. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, that doesn't really bother us. That doesn't make us change our call. That doesn't make us change our front. Like we're okay. But then there's some other stuff now that people did to us over the couple of years. Like, man, we played Jesuit last year. And they were really good, and they did a lot of really good stuff on offense. And I'm kind of making a note like, all right, we need to add that, you know, like we need to add these wrinkles, because once you've sat on the other side and you're game planning, you know, it's a different animal.
Oh yeah, I already know. Like from when I was on the defensive side, I know you don't like multiple fronts.
Yeah.
And, and now that I'm the O-line coach, I can't stand it. I'm like,
Oh,
well, when they're odd, our rule is this. When they
yeah,
bump to an even front, that changes my rules.
absolutely.
So that's more on the kids having to
It's well,
know
and
rules.
to your point about on the kids, like I heard somebody say it at a clinic one time, and it always was like resonated with me, as far as like you're never gonna trick. Like I had coach, I freaking had Darlington, Wilkinson, and Price in my district, right? Well, Price has won a state championship. Darlington is the single wing demon god, like of the stuff that he comes up with, and Coach Wilk has won a bunch of Coco. I'm not gonna like I can't stack my resume up against theirs. It's like what I would tell our kids is I don't have to trick that guy. I don't have to trick the 18-year-old the coach that's been coaching for 18 years. I got to trick the 18-year-old kid. Because he can't be out there on the field with him. And like
Tyler Reddick here from 2311 Racing. Victory Lane? Yeah, it's even better with Chumba by my side. Race to ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T&Cs. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
And so kind of talking about like multiple fronts, like when we were going against Darlington, like we had to throw the kitchen sink at him, and we had, because at the end of the day, I had to try to trick that kid on the field, because I'm not going to trick Darlington. He's seen every front, he's seen every blitz, he's seen every coverage. Can I trick the kid? Can I get the kid guessing and second guessing and all that stuff? But yeah, that was golly. I can't tell you how bummed, if you sense my sarcasm, I am that I don't have to game plan for the single wing every year. Well, at least not his single wing.
Yeah, I was about to say, be careful.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was funny too, because he's been a really, really good, I would say, role model, but a really good friend. We've become really good friends.
Oh, he's such a good dude.
Such a good dude, and we had a decent amount of success against him on defense 2 years ago, and so it was funny because when I got the job up here, he texted me and he was like, "Hey, let's get together and talk sometime. I want to see what you were looking at, defensively, and let's talk about, I'm going to tell you what gave us fits, and you can tell me what gave you fits." And I'm like, "When you retire, then we'll talk." Like, I'm not going to tell you too much, because you might be up here before you know it. I might be back there. I'm not going to give you, everything. I can't tell you, or whatever. But yeah, he's a great dude, man. We played them this year, and they had like a 2 or 3 week break before we played because of hurricanes and everything. And we're sitting there talking pregame, and he's got his, heavy rock, Led Zeppelin headphones, listening, drinking his Monster and Red Bull. And I was like, "Coach," I was like, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that you guys have had 3 weeks off, because you have probably just been sitting at home coming up with all types of things." And he just let out this slow laugh. And I'm like, "Oh, crap." And fortunately we won, but it wasn't because of our defense. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he texted me this morning. I tweeted the Flex Sports thing that every high school kid needs to jump on board with, and every coach needs to get their kids signed up for the platform for that, to help with their recruiting and NIL, and allows them to get committable offers, and
nice.
put all of their grades and everything that they need. It's a one-stop shop for recruiting, and it's going to be the future, and it's free.
Heck yeah.
But anyway, so he texts me, "What is this?" So I'm in workouts, like trying to explain it to him. And when I'm not getting those texts, he sends me, like, when he loves Bruce Springsteen. So he goes to concerts every year. And he sends me selfies of him and his wife in the Meadowlands. He's like, I'm seeing the boss. And I'm like, "Man, this is awesome." I mean, I love Coach Darlington. He's one of the most awesome people I've met in this business.
Unbelievable, dude. And it was such there was definitely a part of me that was like, "Man, holy cow, like what am I doing? I'm having to go up against him." But when we lost to them 2 years ago, I think it was 14-3. We held them to 7 points on offense. Now we had our long snapper snapped it overhead, and so that was how they got their other touchdown. And after the game, he said some really kind things to me, and I kind of went home to my dad, and I'm like, there's certain things that people say them, and it comes from certain people, and it kind of resonates with you. And so to earn his respect, to earn his, and to tell that he meant it. And it wasn't just like a hey, good game, that was honestly, don't get me wrong, I'm still sick as I'll get out that we didn't win that game. But it just meant a lot, and he's a great friend. He's been somebody that, it's pretty cool to have him, because look, man, growing up in Florida and his Apopka teams and everything, it's just the success that he's had. And we talk about evolving too. Like, I mean, everybody talks about the single wing, and yeah, I mean, they do a heck of a lot out of it, but they evolve too, and they do a lot of different things out of it. I think I charted one of their games, going into last year. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we got 72 formations that we have to line up to, how can we make sure that we're not out-gapped in this? So, yeah, he's awesome, man. And again, like Coach Wilk was really, he's a good dude, Coach Price. So it was pretty cool. You talk about like the Legends podcast that you guys have had. And, man, I felt like sometimes I'm sitting in those district coaches meetings and I'm like, golly, what doesn't belong here? Like this young dork, like I better make sure that I got my stuff together.
Well, so you make the jump this past year up to Eagles Landing Christian Academy. What made you decide to go ahead and take that jump to that place?
Man, honestly, it all started. It's kind of towards the end of our season at university. We'd had a really good group, and I'd never. If you do high school football right, and you don't live in the transfer portal, you're going to have good years and bad years, and like I said, I was at university for 12 years. We went through we went to the peak, and then we had a refresh and reset, and we went 1-9. Crazy, believe it or not, our best player on the 1-9 team was a wide receiver. Guy plays defensive end for the Philadelphia Eagles now, and he got a sack in the Super Bowl, and so we went 1-9 with the guy that got a sack in the Super Bowl. That's how good of coaches we were. But we kind of went through that wave, and this group that we had kind of seen through, just some of the stuff, man, it's just so tough in Florida, unfortunately. And it's not the financial piece. I mean, obviously that is a part of it, but just from a facility standpoint we practiced in a retention pond the last 3 years. We won 19 games in a 2-year stretch, and we're practicing in a retention pond. And when you get hurricanes in Florida, what's going to happen? You're it's now filled up. And so we're practicing in a softball outfield. We're practicing in a baseball outfield. And you're just going, man, like, why am I, the job's hard enough, right? I mean, like, there's so many challenges, there's so many external factors, but now you're adding all these things. And so I honestly, like, I never wanted to leave. I was at peace with it. And then I just kind of felt, like God was telling me, like, there's something else out there, and it was a leap of faith too, because the challenge for me was when I resigned in January, people thought I'd had another job lined up. I mean, and unfortunately, like, people at my last school, like, there were some people that were pretty tough on me. Like, I'd been there for 12 years. Like, I'd never, I wouldn't say never had a blemish, but, never an issue or anything like that. And, people thought, oh, well, you're going to this place, you're going to that place. And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, I don't have a job right now. I just know that it's not going to be here. And I didn't want, because if you do your program right too, I mean, you're going to start mat drills, you're going to start off-season workouts, and that group of kids that was young and up and coming, they're like, Coach, when's it starting? And I just knew my heart wasn't there, and I wanted to be fair to them, and I wanted to be fair to the school. And so I resigned, and then I kind of started saying, okay, what's out there, and there's some places in Florida, there's some places in Georgia, and God bless my dad, man. He was my partner in crime, and he drove me, so I wasn't alone. And I made some trips. I mean, I drove up and interviewed with some people in Georgia, interviewed at some places, some pretty big time places for coordinator jobs, and just in case if I didn't get a head coaching job that cycle. And so, man, it was just really, really tough. And believe it or not, the pastor at Eagles Landing Baptist Church, was our chaplain at Valdosta State when I played there. And so he had texted me. He'd seen the article on Facebook and that I'd resigned, and he said, hey, I'm not sure if you heard, but I'm at ELCA now, and we got our spot coming open. Our spot's open. Are you interested? And I was like, what's ELCA? Like, I didn't really know. And man, I was all over your guys, all over your website and all over your job postings, and because I knew some of the jobs from my time at Valdosta State, and I'm texting my buddies that hey, what's this place? What's that place? Is this good? Is that good? And so, the few people that I texted about ELCA, they're like, it's a special place. Like, they've had a couple down years, but they've had success before. And so drove up, and interviewed, and man, I got 2 sons. I got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. And when you're sitting there and you're talking about, man, they can go to the same school that I'm going to be at, like, I'm going to go eat lunch with my kids during the day. My wife's going to work here. I'm going to get to see her more, because I think every coach you look at that gets out of the profession typically says the family aspect, like, they don't get to spend time with their family. Well, heck, now I got my family here, and so, when we came up and toured, I'll never forget my 7-year-old. He was like, "Wait, Dad, like you're going to go to school here and I'm going to go to school here?" Like, huh? And I'm like, "Yeah, buddy." And he was like, "All right, can we start tomorrow?" I'm like, "No, like we ain't going to do that quick." So, man, it was the right time. It was the right place. And it was hard too. I mean, cause like, we had the house we lived in Florida was next door to my parents. Like we had a sidewalk connected. And so like, those are some unbelievable times, and letting, my dad's a coach. My sons and all of my cousins and nieces and nephews, they don't call our dad grandpa. They call him coach, so it's Coach and Grinkle, which this is my mom's name. It's a little goofy name, but he's coach, and so it was tough, cause it's like, man, we're moving, 6 hours away. But even when they came up here and they saw the place and they saw the people, it was just, they kind of knew it was the right fit, and it was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So, man, it was a hard spring. I got a lot of miles in, and it's tough too, because you're trying to discern what the next best move is, because there were some places that, passed on me, but there were some places that I had to pass on. And, only time will tell. But I just felt really good about this place and this community. And again, like some of those places when you're sitting there and they go, when you ask them, "Hey, when have you, what's success looked like here?" And they go, "Well, in 1972, we were the state champions," and you're like, "That's great." The Dolphins were the Super Bowl champions back then, and they haven't done crap since. The nice thing about ELCA was, man, hey, we won 5 in a row here a couple years ago, and we're not too far removed from that. So it's a special place. There's a hunger, from the people, and the school. And so it's been a really good time.
So coming in to a situation that's had that kind of success and sustained success, recently,
yeah.
When you come in as a younger head coach, what did you sit down and say, all right, this is the first thing I got to do to put our thing on it?
Sure. Right. Well, and that's like, there's a balance, right? Because I think the biggest mistake, it's the paradox and the struggle with is okay, what have we done well? Right. Because you don't want to just come in and go, okay, it's my way or the highway, get lost, people. I'm this gift of football. Okay. So what have we done that has been successful? And then also, okay, just because we've done it this way for the last 20 years doesn't mean there's better ways that we can do things, and so I think it was just kind of trying to come in, and I think it all starts with, it's not it's cliche, but you gotta develop relationships. You got to meet the kids where they're at. And honestly, that was one of my concerns even before coming here, was like, man, I love to connect with the kids. I love to, to adapt with them. And I want to make sure that the kids that we have are going to be kids from different walks of life and different backgrounds. And so, fortunately that we are, we have a lot of unique kids here. But yeah, it's just kind of coming in and saying, okay, what have we done really successful? Where did the ball get dropped? Where have we gone off course? And okay, I'm willing to try that, but because the other thing is too, and I got to say this, and I don't know if he'll listen to it. Tanner Rogers, who was the coach before me, he was a model in just humility, grace. He said and it's awkward, right? It's tough. Nobody, you go from sitting in the chair to, somebody else sitting in your chair. And he finished out the year at the school the last month when I came. But it was I never once got any slight of animosity. You just talk about people that are the good people in the business. And he was unbelievable. But yeah, so you just try to figure out, okay, where have we gone missing? Where have we dropped the ball? Where have we kind of steered, away? But I think it's a unique experience, and we're still going through it day to day. Because the reality of it is, if you go, Tanner played for Coach Guess. And if you go back to Coach Guess, I'm the first outside the box hire from him in 15, 20 years. And so, they may have done things a certain way. And, you just try to make sure you tell them, hey, look, we've had some success. I'm willing to, do things your way, but you got to be willing to do things my way too. And so I think you just got to have that, that relationship. And, I'm going to go back to calling offense, and, but I met with our defense coordinator, who's a great coach, a really good young coach. And I'm sitting there telling him, like, hey, I'll learn your defense. We have similar structures. I'll learn your terminology, but here's some stuff that's helped us, and so, because it makes more sense for one guy to learn it than it does for 30 people to learn, one guy's new thing. So, it's been a really cool transition, man. And again, it's just neat, man. I tell the kids the other day, like, how great is it that we're in a place that we have the expectations? that we have that tradition, that we walk by and you see 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, like that's awesome. Like imagine if you're at a place where you don't have that. It's different. Like, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm going from a 7A public school to essentially a 1A or 2A private school, that's playing in a 4A region, which is an experience. But yeah, it's been a really, it's been an awesome opportunity. I understand now too why, Georgia is so lauded for kind of, I mean, just, talking about, things that I had to worry about. But I mean, you look, again, like we talked about earlier, like you got to do the job. It doesn't matter. I mean, and last spring at this time, the well went bad at our game field in Florida, and they said it'll be fixed in July. Well, we were in May at the time, and I'm like, if we don't get any water on these fields, we won't have a home slate, and so my wife and I went to Lowe's. We brought 600 feet of hose. We would have dinner every night, and then I would bribe my boys with ice cream, and we would go get ice cream, and I'm watering the field and switching the zone, and I've got a map, and I'm making a manual list of where we're watering and all that stuff, and so nowadays, like I'm like, I don't have to do that as much, like I can just kind of focus on the football piece, which is pretty cool. So it's a different transition. I'm still learning. Florida rules and Georgia rules are a little different. Like OTAs and what you can do and what you can't do. And fortunately, I've got a lot of good friends, that are up here that either I played with or I've coached against in Florida that have moved up. And so guys like a PJ Katz, who's with PQD, and he's probably tired of me already, but I'm texting him and I'm like, so we can do a helmet and 7-on-7 against because again, I'm like in Florida, they throw the book at you, and so it's just that learning process, but it's been really cool.
Well, speaking of which, did you do a spring?
So we didn't do a spring, and again, that was one of the things that I kind of figure out. So we have, because we're in that 4A region, and because I think there's 10 teams in our region, we start region play week 2. And Tanner, Coach Rogers, had a contract for two fall kickoff classics as kind of a way to get, two scrimmages.
Right.
And so I learned that you couldn't have a spring if you have 2 falls. So, we did some stuff, without the ball and the 4-to-1 stuff, and we got the kids out there and, installed and stuff on air and everything. And so, we had some stuff for the kids, but it wasn't. And again, though, like I told them, like, the 13 years that I've been a coach, I've always had a spring, and so I don't have a plan for this, so that was another good thing, though, just kind of learning and, but also too, like, the reality of it is at a 1A school or 2A school, like, we had a lot of kids that were in track, so it probably was a blessing that to some extent to kind of sit back and see how that schedule looks like and everything else like that. So we didn't have a spring. We will have a spring going forward. I think it's, to each his own, but man, it's so hard nowadays if you don't have one from a recruiting standpoint and internally and externally, so we will have a spring going forward, and kind of, the 10 practices and all that good stuff.
Well, how's summer been so far for you guys?
Summer's been great. I made it through, I tell myself every year I'm not going to do it, but I always do our youth camp the first week of summer. And so last week was the first week that I did, because my few years at university, I would do the youth camp the same time as our workouts. And so I'd kind of split the coaching staff. Well, with being my first year, I didn't want to do that up here. And so we did workouts in the morning and then youth camp in the evening. And brother, when I tell you on Wednesday night or Thursday night, I'm like, Lord, take me now. I don't know if I can make it another youth camp session. But we survived it. We made it. But the kids, I mean, again, like our kids, the buy-in has been special. And I think they see, like, look, man, like, we're going to take care of you as long as you're taking care of the right stuff, and so, I've got an awesome wife who's a coach's wife, that, she gets it, and so the dead week, we're in there, we're painting the locker room, we're repainting the lockers, we're putting new decals up. And so just really trying to, breathe some life into the kids and the program. And, cause like, I mean, one of the challenges, like you always want to do something a little bit better, and like we've had guys that come back, and I mean, I would put our alumni list up there with just about dang near anybody's. And, you get these kids coming back like DJ Chester, who started at LSU in the fall, and he came during the spring. He's like, man, coach, the weight room looks the exact same. And I'm like, yeah, it's not good. Like I appreciate that. But, you graduated 4 years ago. Like we need to be evolving. We need to have like, or a guy that, I had a guy that came in that was, I think, on maybe the 12 team. And he said that, man, the locker room looks the same. And I'm like, yeah, we don't want that. Like we want to make sure that we're always kind of trying to, what can we do better? What can we improve? What can we, spruce up? So summer's been great, man. We got our first 7-on-7 coming up this week at Reinhardt. We've always done it. We do 2 7-on-7s in June. Just kind of the kids have fun with it. We have fun with it. And then July turns to real football, and that's when we kind of focus on us. But the other thing too that's unique about Georgia is, man, football's a long season, and so I like the OTAs, I like the padded camps, but I want to make sure that it's the right situation for us. And so right now we don't have one this summer, just because, I'm not going to go in there and get, rocked and beat up, by a 6A school a week before I got to go turn around and play, because we're playing August 1st, it's our first scrimmage. So, we'll do some OTAs like in helmets only and stuff. But it's just, I think it's a long season, and if you want to have the year that you want to have, man, if you start hitting too early, you want to make sure the guys get to the dance first. You don't want to, get all there beat up and saying, man, you see those 4 kids over there on the sideline, they're pretty dang good. But they got hurt at the end of June, and so that's what we kind of always try to balance, the whole rest and rust and, being fresh versus, being sharp.
So how are you doing your June? Are you Monday through Thursday, or are you 3 days in June?
Man, so we're Monday through Thursday this year. I'll probably do Tuesday through Thursday next year. And the whole reason I did Tuesday through Thursday last year in Florida, and I loved it. Because the reality of it is there's so many camps right now. There's so many places that these kids are going. And, I felt like we were always pulling our teeth on a Monday. Well, so-and-so's at Mercer, so-and-so's at, West Georgia, so-and-so's or whatever. So we'll probably do Tuesday through Thursday next year and going forward. But it being my first year and not having a spring, kind of feeling like we're a little bit behind, I felt like we probably needed to do 4 days a week in June, just to really kind of get as much installed as we could, and so, again, we'll go Monday through Thursday. And I'm never going to be one of those coaches that's like insecure in the work that we do. I mean, we had coaches at Valdosta, I won't say who they are, but man, they would pull in the parking lot, leave their car, they'd walk into their office, and then they'd get an Uber home. But that way, if the coach drove by, it looked like they were at the office working late, and we're going to get work done, but we're not going to stay up here from 7 to 4 p.m. just to say, hey, we met longer than anybody. We worked longer than anybody, we're going to get work done and we're going to be productive in the time that we're there. And then I'm going to let the kids go be kids, and I'm going to let the coaches go be coaches, go be a dad, go be a parent, go golf, man. Because again, once we get going here in August, it's a grind. It takes what it takes. There's, just because we're going to be efficient doesn't mean there's shortcuts from a hard work standpoint. So, we really, I think there was one of my O-line coach, guy that's taught me a lot. And, he always talked about the old proverb about the bow and arrow, and if you leave that bow always pulled back, eventually it's going to snap. So, we try to let June be a time that we have a little fun, we let that bow relax a little bit and kind of ramp it back up, because, again, we want to make sure that we're peaking at the right time. The worst thing that ever happened, and you've had years and I've had years where you get to August and you're already just dead and you're sitting there week 1 and you're like, oh my gosh, this is, what, man, can I make it another 10 weeks? Can I make it another 12 weeks? You want it to be, all right, man, we're ready to go. Let's let them out.
Well, that enthusiasm level that you have, just, you exude it through the mic, and I can tell that those kids at ELCA are gonna have a special experience with you at the helm this year. Is your first year here, and I'm glad to have you in Georgia now, man. It's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to see what you guys put on the field this year and in years to come. I'm excited for you, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey so far with us.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate what you guys do for coaches. Man, like I said, this was a big transition, and it's going to take some time. We're going to build it back the right way. But I will say, man, the resources that you put out there for coaches, and I'm not just saying this, man, I had your website pinned, I had your Twitter pinned. I was definitely checking it out and going through the checks and balances. So I would have been lost as a ball in tall grass had it not been for you guys and what you guys put out there. So I appreciate what you guys do for us coaches and making our lives a little bit easier.
Well, thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother.
What's up, Foos? Main event Jay Uso here from the WWE. When it's just me between matches, it's day one-ish. And that means it's Chumba time. With hundreds of casino-style games and new titles arriving weekly, there's always something fresh to try at Chumba Casino. The daily boosts make it even more fun. And have me about to get them all during my downtime. Ready for a fun way to chill out and enjoy a few minutes for yourself? Let's Chumba.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See T's and C's. 21 plus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.